It's one that's been unfortunately passed down through a lot of generations as far as like the whole concept of Pygmalion in the classroom, that black men are alienated, they cannot achieve, they're not successful. This is a myth that's very, very dangerous, and as Dr. Walsh just stated, it's been very prevalent. But if we go back, in my opinion, through the civil rights movement, black males, and I'm sure everyone on this panel can attest to the fact, have been very integral in the development of black males. As far as we look at the family structure, the nuclear family, black males have been parts of their families. They're contributing to society. In terms of the paucity of black male faculty members, for example, on campus, on predominantly white institutions such as the University of Maryland and College Park, is an indictment against the institutions, in my opinion. If we look at the historically black colleges, campuses, and universities of this country, they have a commitment, but on campuses such as the University of Maryland and College Park, where we have a paucity of black male faculty members, it behooves the institution to hire qualified academicians.
Well, let me ask the question to Dr. Williams. Is the reason there is such a disconnect between black men and education because there's not something culturally relevant in their education?
Yes, sir. I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Even during the rise of the modern black studies movement in the 60s, part of the problem in terms of the gaps of education revealed itself in the fact that African American history and the experiences of people of African descent was missing from the curriculum. At that particular time, that's when students began to demand the fact that their presence and their experience needed to be showcased. Black women scholars, womanists and feminists in the 1970s, Gloria Hull, among others, and Patricia Bell Scott, began to develop black women's studies, Darlene Clark Hine, because there was a gap and a missing link with regard to the experiences of black women in U.S. history, not necessarily as it happened, but as it was portrayed. And so the problem with black men exists as that we haven't brought it to the surface, not enough of the positive images or even the complex images, good, bad, or ugly. And that needs to be infused into the curriculum. That's why one of the things that I believe is necessary is a critical black men's studies in the academy. You need to trace the canon of the experiences of black men in history. More than just the great men, whether it's Malcolm X or Martin King or others, but you need to look at the experiences of black men from the beginning of slave ships brought here, even before then, and then up to today, and look at the mental, the physical, and the spiritual aspects of that evolution. We don't have that. But nothing, Frederick Douglass said, nothing comes without a demand. Never had and never would. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And so if you don't have a constituency, I know Dr. Walter understands this, if you don't have a constituency or a group of people who want or require a certain thing in the curriculum, it's not going to happen. And the same thing is true of the legislative process. And so we may wonder why there is no strong presence of black men in the curriculum, except for at certain times. Well, it's very easy to see. The answer really resides in what are we doing, and it's more than just making a statement here or there, but organizing yourselves and pleading for and requiring that these areas are studied. Well, but it has to come from you.
Let me ask a question. This question goes out to Dr. Leon. When we're dealing with situations, for example, like Timbuktu, the recent discovery of scrolls showing that there's been a rich and undiscovered black history that they're trying to actually now delete in the Sahara, in Mali. Is one of the reasons why we don't know our history is because we don't value those things from the past?
Absolutely. Not enough of us appreciate the information from the past, but a lot of that has to do, I think, with the fact that it hasn't been instilled in us, particularly in what I would say the current college generations and in the generation before. I know that when I work with my students who are in 18, 19, 20 years old, one of the things that I realized, for example, with the assassination of Dr. King or the assassination of Malcolm or for example, we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of Tommy Smith and John Carlos's protest at the 60th Olympics. That was real for me. Now, I was 9 or 10 years old when that stuff happened, but it was still real for me because I saw it on television. I was in Oakland when the Panthers were there in the 60s, so that was real history to me. But now, the current generations, that's a fleeting memory at best for many. And a lot of that is because it hasn't been, the value of that has not been passed on to them in their homes and in their elementary school and middle school institutions. So it's difficult, I think, for students to come to a University of Maryland and demand something that they may not even be aware of that they actually need. Not only University of Maryland, but at many of our HBCUs.
Well, one of the things I want to know, Solomon, is are we utilizing those things that black people control in the community to educate ourselves? And what avenues do we have to do that? I said, are there avenues that are available within the black community that we control, that we can educate ourselves and teach ourselves about our history?
Definitely. I want to first say that I definitely think so. And so a lot of times when we're thinking about these avenues, it's right under our noses. And sometimes we don't even realize what's under our noses because of the way it's been proliferated and controlled by the white media, looking at Viacom, which controls MTV, BET, and VH1. I do a lot of work with rap music in terms of trying to bridge that gap between the disconnect that some middle school and high school age students don't have about their own history, about having a fair and balanced history. Because when I left Trinidad, I'm originally from Trinidad, when I left Trinidad at age 10, I immediately came to a predominantly white community in Massachusetts. And that was I spent there the first 4 years in the United States of America in this predominantly white community. And if it wasn't, I would say, if it wasn't for rap music and having a strong black mother in the household to actually inundate me with all the images that I should have been getting in school, which had as much to do with Americana and the fabric of America as did the white counterparts that I was getting throughout my education every single day. And I have, sometimes I've had this debate with some white students, who think that it's going overboard. They feel like they're being inundated with too much blackness during Black History Month. And I say, every month is White History Month. You know what I'm saying? I've had that debate just 2 years ago. And I asked those same students. I was the only black face in this class that I was teaching. It was a cultural class. And I asked them, well, if you feel like you're getting if you feel like you're being inundated with so many black images, how many of you can tell me who Carter G. Woodson is? And I thought I would at least have one student. Not one student could tell me who Carter G. Woodson is. And I said, this is why we have Black History Month. And so I think that, using positive, progressive images that are in rap music, not the commodified, commercialized, watered-down, diluted hip-hop that we get from BET and MTV. And we know black entertainment television is not really black entertainment television. It's what they're giving us, And so I've used that to bridge the disconnect with a lot of these young folks that are in middle school and high school. So
Let's talk to one of these young folks.
Can I make just one quick point to that? And I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that's why I was saying earlier that I think a lot of this depends on us as parents. When our kids come home in the 4th and 5th grade and say, I'm going to do a report on George Washington. Well, no, why don't you do a report on George Washington Carver? I'm going to do a report on Abraham Lincoln. That's why I said that. I'm going to do a report on Abraham Lincoln. Well, no, why don't you do a report on Frederick Douglass? I mean, that and arming them there, starting that there, will hopefully then it will perpetuate itself.
Well, there's a young brother on the panel here. Let's hear from him.
Well, I agree with a lot of what Solomon just said just now about black history not being in the schools. I remember when I was in high school, I went to school in PG County, which is a predominantly black county, and we didn't have any African American studies classes in my school. There was none.